Do you need to pass your driving theory test? Hi, it's Ben from Bite Size Driving Theory, and in this short video I'm going to give you 3 simple steps with a bonus tip at the end to pass your driving theory test with ease. Because did you know that last year more than 50% of learners failed their driving theory test, with over 1 million tests failed, and this is mostly down to poor preparation for the test. So if you follow these steps closely, then you will almost certainly pass your theory test and massively boost your chance of passing. So let's start with step 1. Now, step 1 involves knowing the content and where it comes from, because the biggest issue that I see is that many people, when they start preparing for their theory test, is they download one of the many apps from the App Store or Google Play Store, and they start randomly flicking through, answering questions, and almost learning the answers for the test. Now, this isn't particularly effective because there are over 700 questions in the DVSA question bank, which means that when you start trying to learn the answers, you've got 700 answers to try and learn. Now, this isn't particularly effective, and also you're not learning the rules and regulations of the road, and also some tips to keep yourself safe and others safe as well. So it won't make you a better driver in the long run. The important thing to do is know where the content comes from and try and learn. Now, I know that this is difficult, and many people start off with the highway code, which is fantastic, but the theory test is actually based on 2 more books other than just the highway code. You've got Know Your Traffic Signs, and this covers all of the road signs that you'll experience on the road, and also for the theory test. And the other book is Driving the Essential Skills, and many of the questions are based on information from this particular book. Now, all of these books are fantastic, and you can get them from your local bookshop or online. However, some of you might not enjoy reading, and you'll find with this book in particular that there's a lot of pages and there's a lot to get through, which is exactly why at Bite Size Driving Theory we've created a full video course that will teach you absolutely everything that you need to know with simple video lessons. You can find the link in the description, and I'll talk more about that at the end. But that moves us swiftly on to tip 2, or step 2. And step 2 is to use those apps that I mentioned only once you've learned the content that I mentioned in part 1. So once you've learned the content, whether you use the books, whether you use our course, or whether you use other courses available on the internet, you can then go ahead and use the apps, all the questions within the course, because our course tests you after each section, to test yourself, identify any weak areas, and also to build your confidence. Because if you've completed a section on everything that you need to know, for example, about junctions and box junctions, then if after that section, or if you've read that section in the book, you can then go ahead and use the apps to test yourself on that particular area, and then that will build your confidence and make sure that you understand what you've just learned. Many of the apps also have a mock test feature, and this is fantastic because after learning all of the content and testing yourself regularly, which is what we recommend, then you can go ahead and take a mock test which involves all of the questions from all of the different subjects. You can set a timer for 57 minutes, which is how long the theory test lasts, to take 50 questions, and then if you pass those consistently, then you know that you're ready to take the theory test. Because the pass mark is quite high, you need to get 43 out of 50, which is 86% and over. So the pass mark is quite high, the standard is set quite high, so you need to make sure that you're consistently passing before you go ahead and book your theory test. Once you've done that, go ahead and book. Don't stop until you take the test, so keep practicing every day until you do that, and you'll be very confident to get a great result. So just to recap on that, once you've learnt the content, as I said in part 1, go ahead and test yourself. Do that regularly, so after each of the sections that you study, answer questions on that particular subject, and then take some mock tests towards the end once you've learned all the subjects, and then you'll be able to identify weak areas and then also know whether or not you're ready to take the test. And that leads us on to the 3rd and final step, and that is to use some useful memory hacks to remember some of the key points in the driving theory test. Now, we actually have a video where we go through our cheat sheet, which has all of the useful ways to remember some of the key information on the driving theory test. I'll put a little pop-up on that so you can watch that after this video. But essentially what you need to do is try and find some ways to remember some of the key information. So one example I can give you is that to remember the age and experience that you need to have to supervise a learner driver, you can use a little tip with your fingers to remember that. So what you can do is you can put up 2 fingers on one hand, 1 on the other, and as you can see, this adds up to a total of 3 fingers. And this is the experience that you need to supervise a learner driver. So you need to have driven and hold a full license for the type of vehicle that you're supervising in for 3 years. What you'll also notice is you've got 2 fingers on this hand, 1 on the other, and if you don't add them together, but these 2 numbers make 2 and 1, 21. And that is the age that you need to be to supervise a learner driver. So you need to be 21 and held the type of license that you're supervising in for a total of 3 years. And that's just one of the many examples that we have in the course to try and remember some of the key information in the test. As part of this memory step, what we advise is that you try not to cram all of your revision into a short space of time. So I recommend that if you're booking the test now, that you give yourself at least 2 weeks if you're studying consistently each day before you're taking the test, because what we don't recommend is trying in one weekend to try and learn everything by, as I said, in step 1, trying to learn the answers, trying to commit it all to memory in a short space of time, because even if you do pass, you're not going to have a great idea of all the rules on the road. So if you take the time, use small chunks of revision, 1 to 2 hours a day at the most, across a couple of weeks, then you're going to feel a lot better when you're studying, you're going to remember a lot more and become less frustrated with each section. So as part of our course, as I mentioned, we deliver that across 1 week. You can take longer if you wish, but we've broken it down so it works effectively. So you study 1 to 2 hours a day for 7 days, and that will complete everything that you need to know for the test. And that leads us to the final step or tip, and that is to not neglect the hazard perception test. Because we submitted a freedom of information request to the DVSA to find out just how many people fail the hazard perception test itself. And what we found is that only 20% of people fail this section. So that's a lot less compared to the more than 50% that fail the multiple choice section. However, what you need to do is pass both sections of the test, both the multiple choice section and the hazard perception test, in order to pass your driving theory test. And only once you pass both sections on your test day will you get a pass on your certificate to go ahead and take your practical test. So what's very, very important is that you don't neglect the hazard perception test and that you prepare appropriately. And we have a very useful video on our channel, which lots of people have found very, very useful. You can watch that via a pop-up, and that will teach you everything that you need to know about the hazard perception test, how the scoring works, how to get top marks on it, and how to defend against some of the particularities of how the test works. So you can go ahead and watch that, and that will teach you everything you need to know about the test. What you can then do is use many of the free websites online to practice using some of the revision clips. And if you watch 10 to 20 of these and you start getting consistent results, then you know that you're going to be fine on test day. So a 2-step process with this: learn how the test works. Like I say, we've got a video which will help you do that. And then you can go ahead and use some of the test questions, test videos to go and practice and get your confidence up to make sure that you feel test ready for that. So that concludes all of the steps that I would take to ensure that you pass your driving theory test. Now, if you follow these steps closely, then I'm sure that you'll almost certainly pass the driving theory test. So if you follow these steps and found them useful, put a comment in the comment section of this video when you have your test booked, how you're feeling about it, and then also if you get a good result as well. We'd love to hear all about your success. I'd just like to end this video by mentioning a little bit more about our full driving theory course that covers absolutely everything that you need to know in order to pass your driving theory test. Like I said, it's broken down into individual subjects and delivered across 7 days. You can take slightly longer if you wish because you have lifetime access. And as part of the course, you have over 5 hours worth of video lessons, over 700 DVSA revision questions that will test you on throughout the course, and then at the end with a mock test. There's PDF downloads, cheat sheets, you can get personal message support, and we also have a private community. And as a bonus, as part of the course, you get a free hazard perception mastery part of the course as well. So whether you decide to go and check that out is entirely up to you, but I hope that you found this video useful and that you go ahead and achieve success in your theory test.